And we shall enter from the sky. And oh, sorry, wrong meeting. Hello, welcome to Planet Collingwood here on Studio A on Revolution Radio. My name is Monty Dean. You're awesome. Just get that. I love you from afar. Get that out of the way as well, because I live in Australia. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday, Odin's Day. You know, it's Norse and stuff. Big thank you to Tony and the gang for the Y-Files. Always a treat for the 15 minutes that I listen to. So we're calling, and now we're back on. For some reason, the server just put it just paused. I did 5 minutes of brilliant material, didn't I, Bruce?
Yeah, it's a good opening.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat it. It's in the ether now.
They're lost, Monty.
It's sad. So anyway, Planet Collingwood, send money. Thank you to the boys in the Y-Files and all that. We have Bruce MacDonald and Cortek, while Cortek's trying to figure out what's going on. So Bruce, I put forward to the question to you. How you going?
Good, thanks, man. Feels like a Tuesday. I've never been so busy in my life for a guy who left it all behind to live in an earthbag house in the rainforest. It's amazing the mischief I've gotten myself into with work and so much. Should I just do a brief recap then? So, you know, I just finished another book. I got a partnership in a company that does a very specialized kind of consulting in Canada. And some NGO that empowers women came up here and fell in love with my wife, and they're financing another 60 hectares of abaca. So I'm busy on every front. I've been working on their grant application all day with my wife, and got the final edits of the Galactic Historian done just a couple days ago. And now I'm going into tax season, because the technical writing consulting I do has to do with the writing of tax grant application for tax credits for technology companies. And I specialize, it's anything like tool and die, any kind of invention, medical, but I specialize in software and telecommunications, and that's what my company does for the most part.
So you sound busy. You also sound like you're in a wind tunnel. So you've got that sort of, unless it's raining there. No, it's
raining. Not raining.
Okay.
I'm going to call back in on a phone. Hang on.
Okay. So modern technology is going really well, ladies and gentlemen. And the internet's great. However, I think we're having our second CME hit us roughly about 2 hours ago. So we'll be feeling that effects. Because the sun, in its infinite wisdom, double tapped us. There was one a couple of, I think a day ago. I started feeling it in September. What am I talking about? Sunday. Time travel. Yeah, it messes with the whole calendars. And that's why people may be feeling a bit different and a bit because a lot of energy coming from our central sun of the solar system. So much S's in sibilance. Hopefully that doesn't come across too bad. So while I invited 3 people, and they're all got problems. So I mean, even the server. Is it me? I mean, I'm trying to do well. Yeah. So that was the sigh for the moment. So let's move on. Who knows? I've stopped looking at the news because it seems to be rinse and repeat. One thing that I have seen, apparently the Australian government is wanting vaccine passports for travelling from state to state. And of course, the federal government's going, oh, yeah, but the states have to pay for the infrastructure and the manpower and just financially back it. We're just putting the idea forward. And I'm like, really? So there's a lot of state border towns, especially on rivers like Victoria and New South Wales. 2/3 of it is actually the Murray River. And there's like Chuka in Victoria and Moama in New South Wales. There's also the famous Albury-Wodonga. I think Albury's on Victorian side. If I'm wrong, it's a 50-50 chance. However, you need a pass. You know, some people will live in one town and work in the other, and so you'll need a papers, please, to cross a river. I don't see this. That doesn't sound like freedom. Bruce
Real.
back. There.
I am, Monty.
Yeah, that's better. So,
Well, I
yeah.
have to be fair here. This is a YY phone. They actually have YY products in Central America, and it's not too bad. And it's only about 65% of the cost of a Samsung or an Apple product. Not that I'm promoting Chinese goods here. I'm just stating a truth.
Yeah, well, they have to have some of it to work, so you keep buying it. I mean, if it was just terrible falling apart,
yeah, I don't give a shit about these phones, right? This is my wife's throw me down. This is the hand me down from my wife. I bought her a fancy phone. They, her and her sisters love the phones, right? It's one of the few things material things they covet, and they shame each other for having old phones. It's pretty hard to shame people materially when everybody lives in wood shacks, but they do it.
They'll find a way. They find a way. It's interesting. The whole consumerism and the hypocrisy that we're seeing. And did you see? I can't remember because it's all a blur. But Joe Biden actually tweeted, "The choice is yours: be vaccinated or wear a mask." And then 3 days later, the CDC is like, yeah, you don't have to wear masks if you're vaccinated. And yeah, more division, more control. And the responses I saw for Emperor Biden's tweet, it was slightly amusing. I can't really say many of them on air, but you get the gist.
So may I? Am I butting in?
No, I finished talking.
Okay, because I've been accused of having high aggression levels here at Rev Radio. I gotta pacify myself, Monty. I would say that one of the things that we miss here is all the positive stuff that's happening, right? And it's a very positive thing that the American control narrative is not working. And this was sort of predicted by someone we both know, that this would be one of the characteristics of this time we're in now, from a little bit after 2012. That a lot of things really did change, but they were so subtle that people wouldn't pick up on them. It's a lot easier to pick up on them now. We've never seen this kind of fumbling of the public narrative before. They've always been lockstep, and now they're all contradicting each other. Fauci, WHO, the White House. It's like they're not sharing memos, and that's a good thing, folks. That's a good thing.
Yeah, because a very good example is the country voted for Biden, and it's time for unity. So we're going to erect an 8-foot wall and have thousands of troops guard us because, just it's totally really it's the reality that the Democrat the big players in the Democratic Party have. It's completely out of touch with the main. How can I explain it? They're creating their own dream bubble, and it sucks. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're living in a time where people can't live up to their own espoused ideals. You see it on the right with Christians who aren't really Christians, and you see it on the left with progressives who aren't really progressives. So in the Christian world, it's self-righteousness, dogma, and belligerence. And in the progressive world, it's virtue signaling, false compassion, or their level of participatory compassion is not actually getting their hands dirty and doing something in the world, but liking the right things on Facebook. Yeah. And I think you and I are on the same page here, Monty, that I'm developing a disgust for both sides. Like, I don't want to live in a world that is dominated by some of the belligerent Christian dogma we get at this radio station. And I equally don't want to live in a Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, phony progressive communist bullshit world. So I find myself like a freelancer now, Monty. I don't really have a side anymore.
Yeah. You're on your own side. Or we're freelancers. I mean, I realize because the far left moved the goalposts that apparently I'm slightly right wing, but I guess I'm more centrist. But even then, it's like, then you got libertarian, like, why can't we all get along, do no harm? And because like that's the idea of the Constitution, from my understanding, is that we can all do what we want as long as you're not hurting anybody. And the idea of the Constitution, instead of mob rule democracy of two wolves and a sheep discussing what's for lunch, it has to pass the Constitution. It's unconstitutional. If it affects one person, you have to ratify it so everyone wins. That's sort of the concept that I've got.
I'm going to say something radical now. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Americans don't deserve America anymore. The America everybody fantasizes about in the 60s and 70s and 80s, the middle class, I don't think they deserve it anymore. I just don't think they deserve that level of material living anymore. And I don't think that they really have earned it, or they've really occupied it in any way, shape, or form. I'm done with all this whining and bullshit, all the nonsense I hear on this radio station. We're gonna fix it by educating people on the Constitution. Believe me, they don't give a shit. That's why they did the 14th on Netflix, right? They're ready for you. And when you come out, when you break out of anything other than the alternative media and start talking that shit, they've already been programmed to call you a racist. So it's a dead end. And nobody wants to change up their game, get creative, and really try to solve problems. Everybody just rests on their dogma, whether it's the dogma of a master's degree in political science or the dogma of, reading the Bible 40 times but still not getting it. They're both just dogmas. These people aren't speaking from any real experience they've had. And that goes right up the chain to the White House now. And boy, another thing that's going on with me is, again, I will never, ever, ever fully recant my position. I am glad Trump sat in the White House for 4 years, if for no other reason that he desacralized and de-ritualized that office. It doesn't have its potency or efficacy anymore. It doesn't spellbind people. If Trump did so much good, but it wasn't the good we all thought he was doing. Everybody just realized, well, there's nothing special, magical, or ordained about a president. Any jackass can get in there. Look at this reality TV guy. Yeah. What the left didn't factor on was going so hard at Trump for 4 years would be hard to put the brakes on when their guy got in.
Yeah, I was about to say that is the left created that situation as well, because it's like, instead of respecting the office, they attack the man and damaging the office. Someone that doesn't have an office that I'm aware of.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, it's Cortek, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome our correspondent from New South Wales.
Ones and zeros, hey? They're not as reliable as they should be.
Well, no. The other guest is away from his talking point place. The server went on hold because apparently I was doing brilliantly. You couldn't speak. Bruce has changed devices. Yeah, I'm putting it down to the CME. That wacky sun which double tapped us.
Did we get that?
Yeah, apparently, I was talking to Andrew just before, around about 2.5 hours ago, the second CME made planetfall.
Okay.
So we should get some blustery winds pretty soon or something?
Maybe, but it's that wacky sun, who knows what it's pumping out. But, magnetically, I mean, there's been glitches. It's some people may say, oh, it's Mercury seasons. Like, no, Mercury's only there to point out that you suck and you need to do better. It's not Mercury's fault. So just pointing that out. That came out a bit wrong, but there you go. It's the hypocrisy. You can see the reactions from the Palestinians and Israel. I'm not saying Jews, because I'm not going to label the actions of a small group of people to 20 million people. It's the government. And I mean, there are Jewish people protesting their own government. There are, 4 elections in 2 years, and the Prime Minister's still battling corruption charges in the courts.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going well.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of streamed protest outside Yahoo's house and stuff like that. I don't know how big they were. I only saw them briefly. Sorry, Bruce.
what I notice about the Jew topic is that, people who now I've taken a good look at it as well, and I'm absolutely convinced there are some pretty nefarious power cells in the livery of the Jewish faith. Like they're within it, but they don't represent all Jews, man. I've met illuminated Torah Jews, like fully illuminated in the heart, light in their eyes, and good people.
They're gorgeous. Like I've been attracted to some of them, but let's not bring that up. But yeah, you actually meet, hey, that classic the Jew stereotype, and I mean this in a positive light. I'm not going like hook nosed and they're evil, but the ones that you just described is like, hey, how are you? Sit down, let's have a kabush, whatever that is.
Lovely
exactly.
People.
Yeah, like most humans.
Yeah, I mean, it's like saying all Catholics are evil because the cardinals are buggering boys. It's just not true. I've seen illuminated Christians here. My wife is an illuminated Christian. All she does is love people. She doesn't understand what happened in Jerusalem 3,000 years ago. She doesn't give a shit. Her church doesn't spend any time on Revelation. Everything's gospel, singing songs, and filling your heart with love and trying to be a positive influence on your community. How could you not like that?
Well, especially where you live on, MacDonald Mountain, where you've got your family's 300. You're dealing with humans, so yes, it's not perfect. However, we could do a list of any type of. I hate race. I use the term tribe, but apart from the English West dismantlement of the family, everyone else, like the Europeans, the Polynesian, the Islanders, and there's always this fantastic sense of family. And even in the Middle East, where it's a little bit cranky. However, you just talk to average in a positive way of using it. They just want to live. They want to have fun. Yeah. Remember when Lebanon had that bomb explode? And you could just there was tears and there was shock, but you could just see the general public are just tired. Like, again. Yeah. We just want to live and have happy families and watch our children grow and succeed and have a better life, because that's basically the premise of you create a human being and you make their life is better, and you pass on the good lessons that you don't stick a fork into the power.
You're right, Ruprecht.
Yeah.
I think we got it wrong with the farming old parents, as annoying as they might be, off to nursing homes. I think we got it wrong there. There's a show recently, SBS did or something like that, and it was just putting old people who are like living at home in their homes with a bunch of preschoolers, and you saw the life that it gave these old people back. Old people are born to be with young people. They're like kids again when they get old.
Do you guys have any friends outside of Rev Radio who on their own, without any, have gone down the Jew rabbit hole? And it's really funny. I got a friend in Canada like that. He got all political when he had his kids 7 years ago. He had them late. He's about 50 now. But he got in. His grandfather was an Anglican minister, and then he just started. He's got a BitChute PhD, and I mean, it's just when people go Jew, they go full Jew. It's unbelievable. You remember in 1978 when they changed the special sauce on the Big Mac? Jews. Remember? Yeah. You know who put the chip in cars so you can't repair your own car anymore? Jews. And I'm going, dude, I think you're no.
I'm just going along. I'm going along with you.
And that actually takes away from where this evil person who pretends to be Jewish, fake Jews as I call them, they're part of how do you say it in the book, the military industrial entertainment complex, where they hide they use the Jewish faith as a mask. And so they can defeat anti-Semitism. But when you point out like that person there who's a fake Jew is doing evil things, it loses all its power. It's like swearing.
We would be equally erroneous if we did not state the truth, and that is that elements of the IDF and the Mossad are deeply entrenched in the global deep state. They're involved in the Super Soldier program, the MK Ultra program. A lot of horrible shit goes on in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. A lot of underground laboratories. You know, but it's not the Jews. No. Just like it's not the Catholics. It's not the Muslims. It's just bad people and good people.
Yeah, it's the psychopaths.
I have no doubt that the psychopaths were involved in Port Arthur, or at least one pretty amazing sharpshooter.
Yeah, a good example of that is you're not allowed to investigate it. Like the police from Geelong wanted to investigate it, and they got shut down.
Yeah, don't look into the giant 20-person morgue truck that we hired 2 weeks earlier, and then sent back to Hartford.
A man that has a childlike mind and loved everybody. Apparently, he is a sharpshooter. Even my friend said you could see he's disassociated, and it's like, yeah, well, that's not him. Someone's obviously implanted another personality or whatever, and we lost a lot of guns here in Australia.
There's a classic picture of this dude with a overly long beard running through the car park, looking a little sus.
Speaking of beards, our two next guests, one has one hasn't. So listen in intently and see if you can. What am I talking about? That's not going to work.
I thought you were talking about ZZ Top.
Well, yeah, we've got the drummer and the bass player from ZZ Top. We've been joined by Harry, another Victorian, as well as the mechanic has finally arrived. So, Harry, how are you, sir? Are you enjoying the Victorian weather with all its schizophrenia?
I'm absolutely loving it. You know, you were saying there was some sort of electric surge from the sun or something a couple of hours ago, or it's been a beautiful day out there.
Yes, it has
been.
And the energy is great. You know, very positive energy. Lots of good people around, enjoying themselves. So I don't know what the problem is with a lot of people, but
well, you're dealing with humans. Let's be fair.
yeah, true. So hang on, I might live in my own delusion. But, you know, it's a delusion I love because I'm sensing what's around me. You know, I'm dealing with it directly. You know, I'm not listening to all bullshit. And in fact...
Real tinny on your mic, Harry. Real tinny on your mic. Do you have a headset you can put in or something?
Shoot. I'll be right back.
Oh, we can't. Yeah, okay. Mechanic, how are you, sir? How is the that special place in our hearts, California?
Well...
Mechanic, ladies and gentlemen.
That's it all, dude. That's it all. Mom always said, you got nothing positive to say.
Yeah.
I do have some positive things to say. We do have a proper candidate for sheriff. But don't get it twisted, gentlemen. I don't think there's any ladies on the panel. Gentlemen, we're into it. We're into it for the long haul, and many will perish. Many will falter. Many will have their own moral fortitude challenged beyond their own belief. And they'll make wrong decisions, wrong choices. They'll shun family, close friends, relationships they've known for decades. They will turn against. These are biblical times, even though most of the Bible is a script, depending on what version you read.
Yeah.
It's written by men in control of other men.
Yeah, and I'm not taking anything away from what you just said. There is a possibility one cat video gets put up on YouTube and it turns humanity on a dime. Now, I'm not focusing my entire existence on that, but I'm open to the idea because mechanic, because you're boots on the ground and you're following the path that I'm not going to say believe, the path that you know that you should be doing. And you're making the papers, which is better than most people on Revolution Radio. I've seen a photo of you. It's like, oh, that's the voice in the face. Oh, yeah. However, you could see, it's 3 arrests in the right positions and half of this stuff can go away.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't even take 3. In fact, 1 and the right newspaper articles, it all crumbles.
Yes. Yeah. So I just adding the positivity there. So you keep being you and just be awesome and don't become, when you fight the monsters, don't become one, and you'll be all right.
Yeah. The other positive thing that's happening is that the left is policing up the wokeness that got out of hand during the Trump 4 years. They're hammering them now, man. Like Bill Maher is incessant, And a lot of the comics are, because they're really pissed off because they can't do college shows anymore. They can't just be comedians anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so they're railing against this, and they're calling it the same thing we call it, an ideological Marxist takeover. But they wouldn't say stuff like, it's amazing how much simple truth they withheld when Trump was in office just because they hated the guy.
Yeah, it was so childish. I mean, actually, it's not child. It's worse than childish because it's insulting children.
It was denigrating to the office.
As well, yeah, it's just the hatred that they have for that man. Oh, he exists, so therefore, I remember seeing there's a montage, another bloody French word in the English language, like 18 months of CNN saying, "Oh, it's the end of." Have you guys seen that? It's the end of the Trump administration. They were trying so hard to manifest it, and like the guy survived 2 impeachments.
Did any of you guys get a chance to listen to the 40-minute podcast I put in Host Chat yesterday? It was a very prominent Canadian journalist who works at the biggest newspaper in Canada, interviewing an economics professor from Carleton University. It could have been right off Rev Radio. They called Trudeau on referencing a Great Reset, and they said, "What is this Great Reset? Why would we be going into an economic plan this epic in its transitionary nature without any election, without any discussion about it or anything?"
Yeah.
And they also cited that and they really called him out on the childishness of pretending he never even said it 10 days later.
Yeah.
And this is mainstream. This is like the National Post. It's like the equivalent of the New York Times in Canada. So I see a lot of light on the horizon. I don't, but like, I don't read the Book of Revelation. Maybe I'm just being self-indulgent, and I should read that and go into the doom and gloom like everybody else.
Yeah, well, Harry, please don't post a novel in the chat. I don't have. I could probably read that in the break.
Did you see China has now also released their artist interpretation of what it would look like to land on Mars?
No, you shared
because there's
that,
never any pictures. There's never any real pictures.
Arizona's looking nice these days. But speaking of Mars, have you seen what Elon Musk has done? It's his SNL stint didn't do that well, and it has been. Someone pointed out it looks like the show was just trying to. They made the show even suckier than usual, so it made Elon look bad. But he's changed his position on cryptocurrencies and everything else like that.
His stock dropped 20 billion or something like that.
Billion, yeah, and it's like, wow, I wish I could lose $20 billion
and still be, reasonably okay about it.
Reasonably okay, yeah. That's the thing. There's so many billionaires. I think in the continental United States, 2 states doesn't have a billionaire living in it or more. And, imagine if they had 100, what's the number that Andrew gives, Bruce? It's like 180 or 18 million, 18 billion. It's a small amount that, if you had enough. Sorry?
To feed the world?
Yeah, the 10 years of getting
18 billion.
Say that again?
18 billion.
18 billion will actually get people out of poverty on the planet for 10 years. Can you imagine the benefit of that?
Don't see any billionaires really stepping up to the plate, do you?
No. Well, apparently, who's the Amazon guy? He's going to be the first trillionaire. It's like,
Bezos.
He can't even keep a wife, so I don't trust him.
I wouldn't hold that against him in the 21st century, Monty.
That is true.
We got to give everybody their fair shake, right?
Well, we are going through the change.
As far as the turmoil in the Fertile Crescent there, which is what it boils down to as far as political intrigue of the nations and whatever. It all runs off that sort of crap. But it's all based behind the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican, because the Dome of the Rock is controlled by the Islamic community, which was instigated by the Roman Catholic Church. So, and all they are is Europeans playing a game there, and mucking around with all the Arabs and Palestinians who, and Hebrew and Jewish people that have lived there for millennia. And if you want to go back even further, the father of all, Abraham, his father was Terah, who was an apostate from India. He was a Hindu. He said there's no all these gods. We've only got one God, and that's where Abraham got the idea from in the first place.
What I find interesting is I just had a thought. Go ahead, Bruce.
Where do you get this stuff, Harry?
I'd say books.
Yeah, I read a lot.
You know, it's much to do with the same place you get half the garbage you spill on here. All right, Bruce? Go ahead, Harry.
Give me an example.
Michael Tessarian talks about that sort of stuff. What is it? The book I've got, Atlantis, Aliens, and the other one. I can't remember the full name of it, but I shouldn't remember the full name of it. I've been reading it.
Well, what I find the Roman Catholic Church is the Roman Empire. They just changed from political into religion.
Yeah,
and they've been one of the strongest powers on the planet. And when the Renaissance, they took a hit. When was the Age of Enlightenment? You could see it using as a timestamp Queen Victoria's reign. There was a massive change. You had the Industrial Revolution, which is how long did that go for? Because that started roughly in the 1700s, but it was definitely all through the 1800s, and then. Yes, and I was just about to lead up to when you have electricity, which I think Bruce can take the talking stick from here.
Okay, so mechanic. Asking someone where they're getting something is not really requiring the response you gave. I'm very familiar with Michael Sarion, and if he actually
not like
said
I fit into some type of category, Bruce. I'm just going to do it.
Let me finish there, Rat Eyes, okay?
Go ahead.
So if Sarion said it, it's probably true. He's the best occult researcher I know out there. I've been following his work since 2006. I'm glad I asked the question. I wasn't doing it to put Harry on the spot.
I came over a little condescending. No big deal. No big deal, Bruce. We can
shut up and let.
Hey, easy, everyone.
What?
Bruce,
What'd you say, dude?
Just talk.
I'm working with you here a little bit, and you're being a complete dick now, dude. We can raise the bar anytime you like.
Just let Bruce finish.
You did already. I asked him where he got it. He told me. I've been edified. I'm glad I asked the question. I now know something I didn't know. Do you see how a conversation works? Is it okay if we get on with it?
I was already past it, son.
Yeah, all right, yeah. It's that CME. I'm blaming anything that goes wrong today. It's the CME, and if the CME has a problem, I'll see it in court because I won't see. Who would the CME get for a draw? Anyway,
what do you guys use for your solar news? I was using Solar Ham, but I don't know if that's the best one.
I think CME's made Mechanic the father, Holy Father, because he's just called Bruce the Son.
Hang on, that story framework sounds very familiar.
That is absolutely fascinating, actually, Harry. Another fascinating Sarion point is he said the Egyptians got a lot of their stuff from the Irish, that the Irish were there like thousands of years ago. And
I had something like that too.
You don't think the Vikings and Chinese were here before Columbus?
If the Irish really knew about their heritage, things would be a little bit different.
The joy of the Celts. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, no, that's a fact. The Vikings and the Chinese were here before Columbus. What we do is we go in and we take ownership of everything. We've been doing there is some truth to this white entitlement bullshit. We've done some horrible shit, right? And we think we've discovered everything. And
okay, what's also true is that whites were slaves before any other race.
Yeah. I'm being pedantic, man. Again, it's not we. It's like it channels back to the English, and even you see how the English people are. It's that small group of inbred blanks that control everything, and God is an Englishman and everything. It's like I don't think so. That's not how it works.
Excuse me. Just got something to say here. It's not about. Who's been slaved. If you look at the stories, we were created to work. So there's a fusion between. So there's always that enslavement. There's always that sense of duty or sense of honor that's in our condition. And the thing is that the conditions are out of control, and so there's no unconditional servitude anymore to anything because other people are thinking they're greater than the sum of all.
Yeah, usually bankers at this time. I always find it fascinating through history where one guy, Alexander the Great, and he talked, thousands of men. I want you to go and kill and get killed for me. Maybe because I'm slightly a coward. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't sound that good. But how they can rally the troops and for God and gun, like the English fighting the French. God's on both their sides, and I've got a feeling God's like, sorry, I was looking at Saturn. What's going on? And speaking of military, we've been joined by John Z. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right for the most part, anyway.
How's New York?
How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks.
Yeah. How you doing, eh? Good. Interesting times. There's been a CME.
Indeed they are.
So yeah, I can see where people that are attacking whites, they get slightly evidence, but then they blame everybody, and it's like, well, I don't remember invading Burma.
It was that night you got really drunk, Monty. You remember?
Oh yeah, the cognac. Good times.
You said never to bring it up again. But
yeah, I don't think we even call it Burma anymore. It's
you can't.
Lamar.
It's your fault. It's your fault.
Didn't the Moors enslave portions of southern Italy? Yeah. Slavery's been around. Slavery's still today. It's still going on today. The Rome, it's like reparations. I know Mechanic agrees with me. Only if there's a 98% First Nation tax. Yeah, twanks. But
the Moors are white and red-haired people as well. That's why a lot of the clerics in Islam dye their red beard, because also Muhammad was also Aryan. The thing is when you chase the blue eye pattern and the mummies through China, through they found in the tombs in Egypt, they're all red hair. So the Aryan thing, Scotia was a princess from Egypt who got married the king of Scotland and the Picts. Oh, was it the Picts? Or
the Celts, and then I think it was the Picts.
So that whole thing has always been there. The Syrians also inhabited Ireland as well. It's traced back to Syria. In fact, the Tuatha De Danann traces back the lineage, the story, to Noah. I think it's Shem or Ham, one of the brothers. And they were sons, I mean. That's the lineage. So it's in their stories. So the Aryan race, with the Aryan Dravidian with India, with the Dravidians being in the south and the Aryans coming from the steppes of Asia, Central Asia, and through. They brought the horses as well. They were also the Berbers. They were also the Iberians. They were also these really weird groups of peoples, the Moors, and also, what's the other one? The Berbers and the Basque. The Basque.
I get it. Yeah, because it sounds like we're being a Mongol race. We're all mixed up already. And from everything you just shared to me there, Harry, I just realized the actual Nazis of today are complete morons. We're part of the Aryan race, but you beat up Indian people. You really need to know some of your history. Especially they always label it, the way that the media, anyone that's full of hatred, it's always right wing. And yet, what is it? Portland's still on fire because they're protesting.
Iran is Aryan. Iran.
Oh, that makes sense as well. Yeah.
And Persia, as in the what were they?
Persians.
There are different ones as well in the Persian region.
But it seems like the controllers of the planet. There's a faction that are trying to take back everything, and they've infiltrated everybody, and they hold a grudge. Like the idea of America being the new world and a new place to start. yeah, the elite of Europe
started
really.
out like that.
Yeah, but the elite didn't like that. It's like what I mean. I shared a meme of you've seen that Prince Harry is that like apparently the First Amendment is bonkers, and a lot of people have used that First Amendment by responding to that. But there's a meme of an French elitist from a TV show. You'll recognize it. He I can't remember his name right now, but they've placed Harry's face on it, and it's like that moment when you move to a former colony and realize that the peasants have a right to speak.
I saw that.
It's like what they can voice their opinion now, and it's just that hypocrisy in world where our betters, and it's all a form of control. And apparently God gave the right for the Queen to rule. Can I see a receipt on that, please?
Yeah, because so when you go back into all the Egyptian stories and stuff like that, all of their kind of your right to be a ruler stories boil back to their mothers having a dream the night before or something to that effect. Yeah, they're all just so shady.
And then killing everyone else that wants to be pharaoh as well. That's the other fascinating thing. Like David Icke, I think it's in his first biggest book, The Biggest Secret, and Harry alluded to it a bit, where Mr. Icke started in Egypt, but you can follow the power structure all the way to England. And I think the Celts before Egypt.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It goes too far back. You know, Bruce?
Well, and history's full of lies anyway.
I mean, I don't know, but I have an idea.
Ballpark.
So they say the first two places to the first remnant societies after the fall of Atlantis were Tibet, Turkey, and the British Isles with the Celts. And that's why when you get into Michael Sarion's work, thank you for bringing him up, Harry. He really focuses on the Celts. He's an Irish occult researcher, and it's amazing how the Irish and the Scottish just went out there and influenced so many things. And the Turks and the Tibetans have been around for a long, long time as well. So if you look at anything, really, it's probably infected with those cultures because they were the three root cultures after the last big fall of Atlantis.
Quick question. How would the Aboriginals of Australia fit into that? Are they residents of Atlantis? Because they're, at the moment, the oldest civilization on the planet because they're about 100,000 years. And then actual Indians from India, the second, and they go back about 50,000 years, apparently.
And if you guys don't know.
The Dravidians from the south. Like the Dravidians of the south was... When you go to India, the more north you go, the more pale skin you get, right? The southern part, the more dark skin. And they're called the Dravidians. So it's a Dravidian line. And they've always been here since Mu, whatever you want to call it. Yep. This whole thing. See, we have sun temples, right? Over every continent. These sun temples have people of origin from every place, all right? And they relate to different aspects of the cosmos, different points in the galaxy, you want to call it. And so they all have sense of origin, except some of them completely wiped out, and some of them remnants were left. And this is what we have today, is the mixture of all them. But we have the Aryan story because that resulted, European and the root Swedish and Finnish languages, which English comes from, a lot of, has also the saga, another indigenous story from Finland, or origin story, is the Box Saga. It's only just recently been released. And of course, there's controversy around that as well. But the thing is that they're telling the same story, is that before Atlantis, we had paradise all over the earth. There was everyone were tropical people. And what happened was Atlantis, the word Atlantis is when the waters came down, the poles snapped frozen, and there was only a remnant left in the river, in the streams, of the oceans that goes up from Mexico and around down to over the North Pole. Anyway,
Mechanic, you wanted to say something.
That's where the word alt land ice comes from.
Yeah. Everything that we believe to be true in general, on a general basis, right? We got to talk about the general population in each one of our countries. We were talking about the histories of Aborigines, the southern tip of Africa needs to be discussed, and then we take a look at the North and South Poles. These all have fictional fairy tale conclusions as to their origins. People aren't allowed to go to Antarctica. Some people are in the know. I've heard people say, "Oh, you can plan." I heard it's $50,000 just to get a permit. And get this, the permit, all that does is show the board that votes on whether you get to go there or not knows you're serious, and you don't get the $50,000 back.
That's why Buzz Aldrin was so pissed off and had a heart attack down there. He said, "I've been promised this since I've been promised this forever." And then they got down there, and he kind of wasn't allowed in, and he had a little tanty.
A little bit of a fit, huh?
From the age of 15, my dad joined the merchant navy till he was 19, and he met mum, and then that was it. But the thing was, is he told me he's been across the roaring 40s and big container ships and things like that, and he's told me about mountains of waves that he's been through and stuff. He did his apprenticeship anyway. But the point being, Antarctica, he said, this which he heard from the other seamen is there's actually, they've seen when they're going past there, they see these people.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Moving through the ice. In other words, they're seeing things animated going inside the ice. So that's the story that comes from my family, even before I knew about this Admiral Byrd thing, and and that's another story. But I won't tell.
Like what, Cthulhu or something?
Well, it's all odd.
Just jokes. I didn't want to open that can of worms. Just jokes.
He said semen.
Yeah, my friend of mine. My friend of mine uses the nickname. He calls me Butthead, and I call him Beavis, and he doesn't realize that Beavis is the dumber one. Hey, Butthead, Beavis.
That's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful.
So, like, yeah, if you want to be out of Beavis and Butthead, you want to be Butthead. if they're your only choices,
Butthead. Yeah, what
the idea.
Beavis is the hook nose. You don't want to be
that. My mother called me Sprog, so that probably makes sense.
That's complimentary.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Z.
Yeah, the idea of stuff being animated, watching stuff go in and out of the ice in, some pretty remote place that there's really not a whole lot of population over there. There's probably a good reason for it. It's Cthulhu. No different than, well, I mean, Cthulhu might be a stretch, but, again, if you believe the stories of giants and, there's all sorts of what we call fairy tales or the Fae people.
The plane,
it's really...
the plane.
I think this planet can still produce mutants like that. I mean, you look around and there's always mutant insects being made. Why can't that happen on a bigger scale,
I married a female version.
Wouldn't even be considered mutants.
Harry.
Yeah, you're sharing again,
like
Harry.
Super giant whale, crocodile, four-legged thing.
Fascinating individual.
I want to ask John Z something. May I?
Yeah.
John, have you been there? Have you been to Antarctica? You're the only one on this round table who has a decent chance of having been there.
No, been to Alaska though, but that's pretty tame.
It's like, that's nowhere near. But I know what you mean. Yeah, that's
right.
It's what in a low population. I don't think humans are really. They don't thrive in the very cold bits. Like most of Canada, and Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just the bottom third where all the population is, and the rest of it's just a massive national park where the Inuit hang out. And like, don't come near here.
You don't want it.
I live in Tasmania, and I visited my mate Ben in Dover.
Not even the.
That's right down south.
Go, Bruce.
Not even the bottom third, more like the bottom 30th. Like 90% of Canada's population lives right on the U.S. border.
Yeah, I'm sure some U.S. president one day is just going to, we'll just bump the border up.
I have a buddy who's a special investigation unit officer for the province of Ontario. They get involved in any shooting of a civilian by police or serious injury. So he covers the entire province. He's a full-blooded Ojibwa native, and he's been further north in my province, Ontario, than anyone I've ever known. And he tells stories like you can't live there. It gets so cold that you have to go to the grocery store with 2 sets of keys because you got to leave your car running. Because even if you're just going in for yogurt and milk and you're going to be out in 3 minutes, that engine will not.
Otherwise, it just freeze over, huh?
I've
heard that as well from some trucker stories and stuff like that. Having to keep stuff running.
And that's why carjacking is the death penalty.
Hey,
I just want to get some milk, and this guy stole my car. Let's hunt him down.
I lived in a place.
Graphite, some mystery oil, maybe a small, real small. Here's a trick. You guys want a trick? I'll give you a trick. Take a real small coating of like some grease or whatever, and you put that over your brake terminals, just the clamps themselves, just a real small amount. If you're in a heavy winter environment, right there, and then graphite on your keys and put that into each of the cylinders on your door handles, and you will eliminate any problems with access or battery problems or accessing the door handle, etc. Go ahead, it's your show.
Nice tip.
Yeah. I lived in a place in New Zealand when I was going to school one day on the bus, and there was this frozen eagle sitting on a fence post.
Yeah, New Zealand is the maps kind of show New Zealand is equal to Australia, but I think Wellington's roughly this. I could be wrong, but it's the South Island really dips towards the South Pole, and it gets cold. I was in Invercargill in 1990, and I threw a stubby in a frozen puddle, and it was 8 o'clock and no one was out.
And
just the dumb Australians were like, "Oh, let's go out," and all the natives are like, "You're special."
Yeah, no.
Yeah, because when it gets dark, it gets real cold.
Yeah. But apparently, what happens in that region, because it's like in through a valley and whatever, is there's this snap frost comes blowing through, so anything in its path gets frozen overnight.
Changes in the wind. Have you seen those maps of if we actually lost water, New Zealand would become this incredibly large continent, about 2/3 the size of Australia?
I believe it. Listen, we're headed for mini ice age. I'm not sure, Bruce. I'm not sure if you were on the show. Were we talking and we got a confirmation, right, of a mini ice age?
I believe what Dave Fine is saying. Yes, I absolutely believe him.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, we got some music.
Yeah, we're at the break, so you're listening to Planet Collingwood. We're doing history and crap. So just after these messages, come back and we'll continue on with this fascinating conversation. Your Revolution Radio, Studio A. Hello there. For those playing at home, if you know any Star Wars fans, say that, and if they don't answer, General Kenobi, you're a bold one, they're not a fan. You're listening to Planet Collingwood here on Studio A on Revolution Radio. If you enjoyed the last hour, please go to freedomslips.com and or revolution.radio and donate what you can so we can continue on broadcasting on Studio A and B. We're 100% listener supported, 100% volunteer. It's just, people, bills and so yeah, that's the world we live in. So to stay on air is the contributions by said listeners. So thank you for all your help. Then while you're at the website, go to the Zazzle store, buy some t-shirts and caps, onesies for the little ones, and so on and so forth. And then if you want to, you can pop into the chat room and hang out with wonderful people. And I've been glancing at it, and I just remember the good bits. Let's be fair. I have been joined by, we're up to 6 guests here on Planet Collingwood. Been joined by Bruce MacDonald, the mechanic, Cortek, Harry, and I believe we've been joined over the break by Sergeant Miller. Sergeant, sir, are you there?
Well, Monty, according to Tucker Carlson and Zen Garcia, I got 6 breaking points I need to get out.
Well, it is a comedy show, so I'll let that go.
How's he coming through?
That was just my, my little hijacker.
Yeah. You're coming through all right, Sergeant.
Well, hey, comedy solves a lot of problems. But
yes,
gentlemen, thank you for accepting my call, and I just enjoy talking with intelligent human beings. I think that sums it up.
Well,
You going to leave the call now, mechanic?
I'm leaving.
Yeah, all of a sudden I'm disqualified from the conversation.
Dude, it's a joke.
I get it. Yeah. Hey, listen, levity. Levity is the road we should all be walking these days more than ever. Because if you're not laughing at this thing, you're crying at this thing. It's an absolute nightmare. Yeah. And I did it too. What was it? 3 weeks ago? I will admittedly so. There might have been a few issues here at the homestead. Nonetheless, I had uncontrollable laughter.
Yeah, and it's a chief weapon from the psychopaths. I'm glad we came up with that. It's just so, who are we talking about? Who are they? Psychopaths, just simple. They hate being pointed at and laughed at. It's they've got this whole thing about comedy. There's a movie called The Name of the Rose, and it's set in the 1400s. And Sean Connery plays an investigative monk because there's been a murder at this said monastery, and it all leads to Plato's missing book of comedy. And back then, the church laughing was evil, and women weren't allowed to laugh; they had to cover their mouth, and that's only 80 to 100 years ago. And so, a woman laughing out loud, that's clearly Satan.
She's clearly a witch.
Yes, yeah, she weighs the same as a duck burner. And so it's just it breaks up the energy, and it's a form of anarchy in a good way. And controlling people hate comedy, and you can see what's happened in the comedy world, where we mentioned it before, where comedians are now fighting back because they want to do their job, and it's making people laugh.
Well, yeah, you got to throw in all the things that are taking away comedy, right? What's really in the way of comedy right now? Social justice, virtue signaling.
Oh, yeah.
Erasing history. Critical race theory. Right.
Dangerous ideas, like Stephen Crowder with Crowder is fighting is actually suing YouTube, because YouTube doesn't want them on the platform because they're more popular than NBC, CNN, NBC, all those alphabet TV channels. Because he, on election night, his stream was the highest rating on YouTube. And it's a comedy show. And people remember when The Daily Show was funny, mainly because Jon Stewart was there.
He was funny.
Yeah, he still is funny. And I love how he went into bat for the first responders for 9/11. Forgetting about all the stuff we know about 9/11, he just went in and said, you're treating them like crap because of the asbestos in the buildings and blah, blah, blah. And they got nothing, and they're slowly dying off. And he just went in there and put on his cranky pants. I don't know how funny it was. He still used comedy.
First responders at 9/11. I'm sorry, Monty. First responders at 9/11, they got infected with more than asbestos. They got infected. They were getting cancer, one after the other. It's not from asbestos. It's from.
No, I just picked a thing. Yeah, it doesn't make sense what the stuff they're dying from, and they got
almost like they were targeted.
Yeah, I can say exactly what they're. I've read the report on it by some. This was about 5,000 scientists, but there's been so many different books we've written. We have 12,000 engineers or 2,000 engineers.
Yeah, the engineers report, the architects report.
Yeah, they did their architects report as well.
Still we've got no closure on. Still, we've got no closure on it.
Oh, of course not.
No, nanotechnology. They found spheres in the dust made of nanotetramite. I believe I'm saying this right, Mr. Z. Am I saying this right?
Nanothermite.
Nanothermite. Boom. Tetramite.
That would be put in by the Mossad art team there. Yeah.
Yeah, they were painted too weak. Yeah.
They were in and outside the buildings, in and outside the lift shafts.
The point being there is that particular type of substance is extremely hard to create and is very highly controlled.
It's military grade.
Yeah, you could say that.
Military grade.
A lot of
you can't walk in Home Depot. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot a lot of the symptoms, diseases, and I don't even know what you want to call it, just crap that they picked up. I'm sure Miller remembers the burn pits that we used to have over in the Middle East, where you would have, oh man, I don't know, it was probably like an acre, a couple acres in some cases of just a pit, open pit. And they would throw everything, depleted uranium, stoves, carcasses, corpses, and they'd just light it on fire.
Chuck it in the field.
I just find that unbelievable and fascinating at the same time. One of the biggest military movements in history. What about all this refuge? Wow, we'll just dig a pit and burn it. It's just like, really? It's what the environmental and also the human cost of the men and women that are working there, and if they're doing a mass burn off of depleted uranium and you're downwind, the knock-on effect of health issues is staggering.
Yeah, John Z. Yeah. Don't JP8 solves all problems?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it does. Gets rid of everything.
What's JP8?
What's JP8?
Jet fuel. A little pinkish.
You mean kerosene? It doesn't burn more hotter than 1,200 degrees. That could not, for the life of it, burn or melt steel. Yeah, kerosene.
I like when people, there's still people that believe the official story of 9/11. And so are you saying that physics and kerosene, the properties of all that just happened to change on a Tuesday in 2001?
Not to mention the whole thing never made sense. Like, just take it like very simply in face value. Let's not deconstruct it any further. Okay, the building fell down floor by floor on top of itself.
And turned to dust.
Wouldn't that take more than 10 seconds?
Oh, yeah, pancake effect. And it turned to dust. It's like, wait, what? And getting back to what we were talking about earlier, how Bruce was pointing out, it's getting more obvious and transparent of the psychopaths doing the same tricks, but everyone's waking up to it. You're getting to the point where this is what actually, I'll use 9/11 example. This is the official story. Why aren't any of you believing it? Oh, you went to primary school or elementary and learnt maths. You're going to get to a point where. Yeah, basically, you're going to get to the point where the government sound like conspiracy theories because everyone else is like, no, you're lying.
But now we've gone through the whole kind of fake news things. You post stuff about magnets, people sticking these magnets to their arms, and this is kind of legitimate stuff that people seem to be, going through, and it's nothing. It seems like everyone's just, it's just business as usual, expected that to happen.
I heard a story that what's the right word? A possible mass shooter was taken out because a gun owner defended, everybody, but the media's not touching it because it actually enforces the idea of the Second Amendment of firearms used in a defensive way.
Can be a positive thing, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's totally against the narrative.
We're looking at a symphony that's been created over hundreds of years, of exclamation points of, terrorizing people through vision and concepts and actual doing things to shock people into this state of cognitive dissonance. Yeah. And what happens is it's a gameplay. They play it, but they're playing it not in the world. It used to be in the theaters of war, but now it's in the theaters of everywhere. And they're just trying to out scenario anyone from moving forward. That's all it is. And it's getting so tiresome that people just want to grab these people by the throat and say enough.
Well,
I thought you've had your little kind of cash grab, your little big pharma cash grab, getting governments to buy things they don't need, just kind of fade out into the background, or things will kind of get nasty.
Two examples that are over a century old: the Titanic. It wasn't the same. That was a complete schmozzle. It was just insurance fraud. Moving on, and the Lusitania. You're familiar with the Lusitania?
Yep.
Yeah. for the one listener who hasn't heard about it, it is the reason that the United States got into World War One, because even I think the German embassy put in New York, "Don't get on this ship; it will be blown up." And the theory is that the ship was sunk by a German U-boat, one of the earlier ones. However, when they found the boat, the explosion was outwards, and so it looked like it wasn't inwards like a torpedo. There was a bomb set off on the outwards. And
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's one of the earliest forms of false flags. The Gulf of Tonkin is another one.
So, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, so we just briefly, a couple of moments ago, touched on what I consider to be a really interesting topic, and one of the most important topics to nail down here at Rev Radio, okay? And I want to bring John Z in on this because he knows more about war, mental, psychological, and literal physical than anybody on this call. John, are we going to war?
John has stepped away from the mic at the moment.
Oh, okay. So my thesis is we're not going to war. We've been in war for quite some time now. And I think we just accidentally defined when it really started. And I would say it was 2001. Okay?
Yep.
The war is on us. The war is on the consciousness of what we call the free world, the Western Enlightenment world, and it's full-on war. It's psychological and mental, and it's physical. A lot of people at this radio station have difficulty grasping this concept because there's no sandbags and there's no rifles. But we are in the midst of one of the most vicious wars of the last 100 years. It has a huge body count. They just took out a huge bunch of people in the senior citizen class in the first wave of COVID.
Yes.
Okay.
I think you're completely correct.
John has rejoined us. Basic premise, I believe, that Bruce is putting forward is the traditional form of combat is not being used. It's being used on everything else. But if you want to put forward the question to John now, Bruce, he's here, so go ahead.
John, based on your experience of warfare, your training, your proximity to strategists and generals and all the people you've commiserated with, your understanding of war, both mental, psychological, and literal physical, are we going to war or have we been in war for some time already?
Yes and no to on both sides. So I can make a good argument that we've been having warfare on all fronts for a couple hundred years, not just militarily, but civilian and political and all that other stuff that goes along with it. But to answer the question straightforward, yeah, we have been in war, and yes, I believe we are going to war. We're gearing up for another one. As to what form it's going to take, I think it's going to be an interesting hybrid of I would say everything, electronic, psychological, civilian, and military.
Financial.
Yeah, I'd like to speak more about the influx of gradually ramping up the frequencies in the guise of you can download stuff a little quicker, and how that really affects our health.
Oh, you're not going to have to do much anymore. Forget about it. You can go into your Whole Foods, in and out. You're not going to need anything. You don't have to fuss with money anymore. All your medical records will be on there. Everything.
Robots will deliver stuff. You can just become a piece of mush on the couch.
Yeah, just stay home in your own Jello mush body fat. Have a good one, chicks.
Sex bots.
Watchman put a video in host chat. Dude talking only a minute and 30 seconds, but he says his dad's a farmer for 40 years. He says the U.S. government is paying farmers 1.5 the value of their crops to destroy them. And if they don't destroy them, they're not going to get their subsidies next year. And the son of this farmer is calling it outright warfare. And he says by the fall, or he said 10 months, we're going to have you guys are going to have serious food issues in the United States.
That's a form of false scarcity.
And you're absolutely right. It was scary. I was not thrilled with this dude's message at all.
Okay. The thing of war, right? If again, Tessarian talks about this in the Origins of Evil You can watch that on YouTube. But he goes back to Queen Elizabeth I, right? It's 1500s, when John, right?
Yeah.
And Kelly, I think his name was,
Yep.
Scryer. They asked the macrobes, which are an intelligence, higher dimensional intelligence thing off planet. Let's put it that way. All right. From what they found out, because you got to remember that all these royal people know the origins, right? Because they come from the ascended ones or the fallen ones. What do you want to call it, right? It goes back a long, long time before the Bible and all that sort of stuff was created and formed. Those stories have been going for a long time. So they knew about that. And the question was how to get off planet, because we suffered a great deluge that kept these royal, ascended ones here. They couldn't get off planet anymore. So they told them all this information, and what they required, as the story goes, was blood sacrifice. And this is why the wars are always created. This is why we have abortions and all this other stuff. It's all about blood sacrifice.
Might it have been that Marduk was a stepping stone?
Pardon?
The planet that was destroyed, in between.
Yeah, the planet. The planet was destroyed. It talks about the Iroquois creation myth. Talks about the sky people, right? There was a people in the sky, all right, which is an inverted dimension of our paradigm that we live in at the moment.
What about electric universe theory? When all these kind of body-shaped things people saw in the sky was just the bodies closer together, and you could actually see the plasma link between them.
It was, well, that was true too, but that was when the firmament was in place, because we were more, if you think, the Fresnel effect, the Fresnel lens, the focal point thing, right? If you look at that as like our eyeball, right? The eye, we have the outer membrane of the eye and the inner core, corona, right?
Yeah.
That is the same as the Earth. The corona is the Earth. The outer bit is the membrane, which is the firmament. But what exists on that layer, on the outside of that firmament, is hydrogen flares, poof, like the sun, right? But on the inside of that thin layer, way up there in the firmament, is a whole balance of harmonic intensities that allows us to form this islands in the sky stuff that people talk about, have dreamed about, in the dimensional states, or gone astral traveling about, and all that sort of stuff.
The genesis of the heaven idea.
Yeah.
In the clouds.
Yeah, because that existed before the deluge. This is what this is all about. This is the Atlantean age was after the deluge, but the remnants of technology were still left. But before that, we had an open system. There was no broken channels to the inner sanctums as well, inner earth, inner realms, inner layer. It was all open. Now,
I still think the deluge was when we got our moon.
Yeah.
You roll in a Ganymede with an ice layer on the outside. You bring it into position. You break the ice layer. You get the water and the wobble to life on the planet, and you get your moon to keep it going.
That's the accelerator. That's the adjuvant for the propellant for us to come to this point again. It's like an access point. It's the time. Time was put into sequence for this to happen again. And this is what the eons are about. It's about this whole spatial recognition that the stardust and the sun and the stars and the earth are all one, right? And it's just a matter of understanding that elementally and making it a propensity.
And I hang out with the Galactic Historian, and I'm leaning towards that's totally true. But there's another 71 timelines, because that's how the Earth has been affected. There's been timeline wars, and because the Earth itself is multidimensional, there's 72 first species on the planet. So it's you think paradox, it's mega paradox.
Yeah. That's the temples, sun temples. There's 72 of them, and in fact, there's 144 because you're not thinking about the inner Earth as well, because they're portals. They're basically, what it is a plasmic beam that streams up from the inner Earth up to the firmament, and it forms another crust layer, and but the trajectory that gets there is hydrogen, because in the beginning, God sent a vibration across the waters, separated the waters, and formed the firmament. This is J-cell technology. That's it. That's all it is. Same thing, because there was light that created that. Okay, and that is electricity. So, if you put the science into the understanding, you can see it very clearly.
Well, it's a step forward, because
I think it's so true that most people who think they have encountered gods have just encountered people with better technology. The dudes in Papua New Guinea with the planes, what are they called, cargo cults and stuff like that. There's no gods. There's just better technology.
Well, not even technology. You've got the spirit angle as well because of frequencies. And all basically, in a premise of the show, our history doesn't make sense. And if we're going multiple timelines, Harry has just described one major timeline which could have branches off and everything. I just want to take a moment to retract my "there are no gods" thing, because that seems like an absolute, and you can't do that. Yeah, you sound like a Sith Lord.
Too many gods, actually.
Yeah, but is it Prime Creator or just false gods? Go ahead, Sergeant Miller.
Now I wanted to add to Harry, the Iroquois. The native tongue is Yananapali. And the reason I say that because there was an Iroquois Confederacy that had the original, what we call the rebel flag, but it was actually the Alabama Regiment of the Iroquois Confederacy. And these were the 6 civilized tribes, Choctaw, Cherokee, Apache, Seminole, and I think Blackfoot. And the reason I say they say civilized is because they spoke Spanish, French, and English as interpreters and also as diplomats. So that's your connection with the Iroquois.
Yeah, it's what I hate about the education system. There's this underlying thing of we're the best, and every First Nation and shamanistic tribe were heathens and savages. And it's like, well, I don't really see that because mostly the British shot everyone. That's not really civilized.
I've got a golden, what do you call that, golden books, the golden kids' golden books on Indians. And in there, it spells out the full culture, the civilized culture in it. So it's not like it's not known. It's just been whitewashed because of the industrial expansionism. Same with Dreamtime. I mean, you talk to any Indigenous person in Australia, they'll tell you Dreamtime's a reality, except it's been mythicized by modern man. Mm-hmm. To them, it's a reality. So anything of the ancient past, all the stories and all the interconnections of nature and all that sort of stuff is not relevant.
Yeah, like the Aboriginals were dumb because they didn't invent the wheel. Well, you didn't really need a wheel where you can actually sit around a campfire, do a ritual, and you've traveled
too up and down anyway. The wheel's not going to do you any good.
Yeah, well, that's true as well. But there's an ancient ritual where you can actually using a campfire at night and travel 200 kilometers, even miles, because they know how to move through the fabric of reality.
Songlines again, magic.
Yeah. Why would you need? Well, we call it magic, but it's higher technology. But I know what you're saying.
Yeah, you're totally right. Just understanding.
It's like the new age. It's like it's taken the some parts of the old age and they've marketed it that way, and so that's why
the natural form of communication between all of us is through what they call it,
telepathy.
Telepathy, yeah. It's telepathy. But
when you're thinking about someone, 3 minutes later you get a call from them or something like that, you know.
That's natural. That's a natural state. What we've been imposed on is an artificial one, and this is because we're connected through the womb to things, and and through the earth. So, but with the industrial expansionism, they overlay their modality onto you. You don't.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bruce, because I just did part of your book, the chapter where we, the extraterrestrials talking to John Edmonds, we should be able to communicate with any living thing on the planet.
Yeah. So John Edmonds has had a lot of contact with benign ETs as well, like literally at his kitchen table in Arizona. They come and visit him because the signature frequency his ranch gives off is so anomalous. It's noticed way out in space, and he's just like a drive-through you might stop at on an interstate, right? So he's met a lot of ETs, and of course he asked the question, when do we go out into space? He says, well, typically by universal law, it's when you've mastered this realm. And he said, well, what's mastering this realm? And they told him, they said, well, you have complete, one of the things was you can communicate with everything on your planet. We're supposed to be able to talk to plants, animals, and anybody who feels like a little giggle on this round table, like it's a bunch of shit. I've met these people. John put me in contact with a woman who's a horse healer. She talks to horses.
We've heard stories about people who, in science, that, you play good music to your plants, you talk to your plants, they grow better. You put a little bit of your saliva or the seed under your tongue for a little bit before you even plant it. It starts growing fruit that's made for your DNA. All of these things with animals, the intentionality in terms of it, you can have conversations with the animals.
And if I can be pedantic, man, it's talk with animals. It's not to. Yeah, or at, yeah. It's, you can actually have conversations. Sorry if I cut you off,
Bruce.
No. Yeah. Oh, well,
yes. That's fine. I want to circle back to Harry, and when you're done, Monty.
Yep. I'll pass on. I've seen footage of there's a panther, and we won't get into that. But it's in Africa, and it was called El Diablo, which is, I believe, Spanish for the devil, and it was, no one could go near him, and he was just really, really upset and angry and all the time. But they actually had an animal communicator come in, and they found out the story that he was treated badly, and right next to him in the next cage were two cubs. And long story short, they found the cubs and brought it back. And the change in El Diablo is 180%, where he was happy, and the people of the reserve get along with him well. And it's actually on footage, just this woman just sitting in front of the animal through a fence, let's be fair. Excuse me. And having a conversation, and she's translating or relating to telling the owners of the reserve stuff that she would have no idea how information, and they were blown away. And it's all caught on camera, and it's not the animal whisperer. It's the animals won't stop talking to me because I can hear them chatting all the time, type thing. And so it's at the moment a unique thing, but we have the potential to do that. Bruce has a dog. You have a certain language with your dog. I have my own cat, where just being in proximity over the years, you'll learn certain things, and you intuit certain ways of communicating. And it's so funny when I ask a question, and sometimes my cat goes meh, and it's like, well, I think that's a yes. But Bruce, for you, I think it's almost encroaching on your own life, because the dog won't leave you alone.
Well, no, he leaves me alone. He knows my boundaries. We're just the best of friends now. I just want to say, Harry, man, you're just on a roll tonight, man. The lucidity is inspirational. I agree completely. I think the Industrial Revolution, I think, first of all, they had the technology and the secret societies to ramp us up to this technological society centuries ago. And one of the reasons they waited is because they wanted to get all this static into the atmosphere, because something naturally benign is happening. It has to do with the motion of the Earth. Hopefully we're on a round table where everybody believes the Earth is not flat, but we're going through space, and we're going through this part of the galaxy now where we're being bombarded with photonic beams, and it naturally raises consciousness. And so in anticipation of this, I believe they set up all this shit to keep us distracted so they can get us through it. And then once we're through it, they're going to knock us right back down into the dirt again, because they don't want us working in factories or any of that shit. The principal business here is us. We're what's sold. We're the commodity. The energy we produce, the psychic energy, is used in other dimensions to construct and sustain things. And our physical genetics is farmed all over the universe. Okay? All over the universe. Mm-hmm. And so this is, and they sat down and they really got behind this. And this is why you see, it's no coincidence that we've just gone from outdoor plumbing to nuclear fusion in 2 generations, from 1890 to 1945. Okay? And one of the reasons they want to get us all into the cities now is that once you lose your connection with nature and the rhythm of nature, the sounds of nature, the base sound line of nature, okay, the wind through the trees, mountain streams, the birds, all of that stuff is natural prayer and meditation. When they get when they get you into the city, you lose all of that connection and all of these sorts of things. And then they twist it to their, what's really ugly about what they do is then they take all this mutated consciousness, redirect it to perversions like transgenderism and all this shit, and then they sell it back to us as, this is your natural state. You just didn't understand it when you were dirt farmers. We've liberated you, be yourself. So it's like doubling down on the insult. So they've destroyed our spirituality, they've destroyed our cultures, and they've destroyed our relationship with nature. And we're in the 11th hour now, man. If we don't wake up to what's going on, it's not going to be, there is no guaranteed happy outcome to this. That's the nature of a free will world. And we're in a free will world. And this is why I come on radio, right? You know, to try my best to wake people up.
Super important.
Yeah.
It's super important. In a world that is kind of, what is it, Mockingjay or whatever it was, the operation that never finished, that said, only when the whole of America or the whole of the world thinks something different to what the reality really is will we have done our job. Mockingbird. Yeah. Mockingbird never finished.
No, Obama brought into legislation you can use propaganda where. That's where, dare I say...
How did that get passed?
Really? A corrupt system? Okay, sit down.
It's pretty easy. Let's go back to point one.
Yeah, it's like, Trump says there's fake news. Well, the former administration put it into law where there are the news agencies can use propaganda.
So
it's retarded.
Everybody's got to get this, or at least certain percentages of every population. The black population's got to get what's going on. The Asian population, gay people, everybody. And when we take bait lines like fighting with each other over white Christian values versus Antifa and BLM, we're playing right into their hands.
Or even gender.
Yes.
Even gender.
Even gender. Everybody's got to get, and again, the best line I've ever heard in 20 years of research and kicking around in this alternative community is Michael Sarian, the guy that Harry introduced to tonight's roundtable as a topic. And it's his mantra. He said, folks, it's a war on consciousness. They don't want you to know what you are. You're self-healing. You don't need doctors. It's like, we are magnificent creatures. Mm-hmm. We're like magnificent pit bulls, and they've convinced us we're cats.
Yeah, think about it.
Because they don't want to get bit by us, because they're scared of us.
The moment of conception itself, you've beaten millions of little squirts to become you. Seriously.
Well, it is round table.
It's true. It's true.
You're a wonder. Absolute wonder.
You're a winner.
Never say you're a loser. That whole process is an incredibly arduous process. I've seen kind of the things that these little spermatozoa have to kind of do is like jumping up 200-meter cliff. Basically, there's this, it's basically a ninja course for them.
They fight each other too.
Yeah, and the thing is, the way that's been used now, it may have popped on your radar. Apparently, men get periods too. I'm just going to point it out. I'm not a medical doctor, but I've read a book. If you have a uterus, you have periods, because that's how it works. It's like you can't say all women have periods. It's like, well, if they have a hysterectomy, yeah, if you have a uterus. So any men out there saying, I'm have my period, please go see a doctor or hospital. It's a wound.
Actually,
yeah, I want to raise you, before we get carried away, I want to raise you. If you suggest that men cannot have children, you can be fired.
Yeah.
You what?
Yeah.
That sounds like a very bad company policy to me.
Yeah, but that's fear-based. It's all fear-based. It's like, we have to be on the right side of history.
Contact the sperm bank. Anyway.
So Jordan Peterson came out with a new book about 3 months ago, and following up his 12 rules, right? It was published, I believe, by Random House Canada. They called, on the day of release, they called grief counselors for the staff and newspapers in Canada went in and interviewed them. And they claimed to have been traumatized by having to be a part of publishing this book. That's how far they've taken this in these people.
That's not just kind of work crunch, like when a development or a game is getting close to release date and everyone has to work harder.
No, it's Jordan Peterson, and the perception is that he's basically Red Skull from the Marvel universe, and they probably didn't even read the book, so they don't even know what's in it.
I was talking today about sowing seeds in the waxing moon instead of the waning moon with ladies at the community house. And I said, if moons affects everything, we had this conversation. I says, even affects my menstrual cycle. And they go, oh, your menstrual cycle? I says, no, menstrual cycle. And I took up my hands and went, hallelujah.
So you weren't being sexist. You're being racist.
Did they get it a second time?
Yeah.
Yeah, walking a dangerous path there, my friend. I'm not being sexist. I'm being racist. It's all right. Go ahead.
So, Harry, if that story you told about Abraham and the Indian dude is true, it means almost every major religion on the planet was influenced by the Indians. Okay? If no Indians had shown up in Tibet, see, all the foundational sages of Tibetan Buddhism traveled to India for their training. Milarepa traveled to India. Okay? And, Buddhism was exported from India. Everybody associates it with Asian culture now. India is the center of all the spiritual teachings in the planet now. And this is why I asked you, where did you get that thing about the Indian and Abraham? It's the icing on the cake, So it all started in India for some reason. And they say they were given it by a blue race. And that's why all the gods are blue.
And the back of that Gita goes way back like that. They have blue people all through it. And, they're talking about... They're talking about flying, what do they call it? Sorry. They're flying the little. They've found little gold models of their flying Vimanas. That's it.
Bananas, yeah.
And there's pictures of a whole bunch of different types.
I jokingly point out, and apparently it's offensive to people, but I don't care. It's all comes down to Smurf Christ.
Look, it's true, but in the colourful picture, right, that's painted through the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata and stuff like that, they're saying, every facet of creation, like. Out in the worlds or star systems out there are planets that exist that the primary sort of intelligence is the trees, or the primary intelligence is the cows. So this whole thing is come together. So the consciousness of this world, we existed in a bubble of heavenly harmonious vibrations. So we could port to these things. We could go in and out like the sun, like they do the sun.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that the cow alien race to come here and it's like, moo, we want to talk to Ronald MacDonald.
We want to extract you into UFOs this time.
Blood transfusion with them because your eyes will roll and you go.
Yeah.
Now, could I make a recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, earlier y'all were talking about the Persians and, that history there. There's this book called Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Now, that book is maybe $30 on eBay or Amazon a piece. But to read that book, you're going to need an Etimon, you're going to need either an Oxford or Columbia dictionary, and you're going to need a couple languages to translate. But they got pictures in there that goes back to Queen Philippia, who created The university we know as Oxford. Over.
Oh, interesting.
So I was going to say that if you look at our ecosystem, one of the few things the world could do without and nothing would happen is human beings. If we disappeared tomorrow, the world would continue to self-regulate. The ecosystem would work. Snakes would eat frogs, jaguars. Everything is controlled in nature. It's a perfect balance. Humanity is the only thing you could take away and nothing would happen. If you took every ant off the planet, the ecosystem would collapse. If you took spiders out, the ecosystem would collapse. Okay? If you took birds out, the ecosystem would collapse. If you took sharks out, you'd have major problems in the oceans because they're the garbage men. Okay? When you look at human beings in our place, it's like the whole place was created for us to do something, and we don't even know what that is.
Mm.
It's shameful, the state of spiritual ignorance we've arrived at.
It's so true. Let's talk about how we can develop that stuff then.
Well, it's not really a choice. We've been led down the garden path. I mean, there's a choice, but we're making that choice now of like, you know what? The psychopaths are complete idiots. There must be a better way. And looking backwards in certain respects of like, well, working in harmony with the planet is vastly more improvement than my getting my update for my iPhone 12.
I think this time is the time for people to make a choice.
Look, I just want to spin something around here. Pharmacy is a broke down version of alchemy, right? And what pharmacists do is they powder it down to a poultice or something.
Yeah.
But alchemy is the opposite. Alchemy is an inversion. It's making the chemical compound manifest. Okay. The alchemy of nanotechnology is the fact that we need to create a unit or a device, a listening tool that amplifies the sounds of the ores. What that does at that level, it manifests the living stones, as it's mentioned, it restores the temples.
What do you mean ores?
Crystalline ores of the planet.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay,
so
yeah. Mining terms.
If you can imagine, for example, a 300-foot wall in a radius of 200 kilometers or something, a circumference of 200 kilometers around, sort of thing. I'm sorry, not a certain thickness, but not going in a big circle, right? Of say jasper or onyx or jade or whatever. But what that will do, they'll create an ambient resonant frequency that allows the atmosphere to be conducive to the natural harmonics of the planet to induce growth, sustain longevity, sustain everything. Because what the gradient is, and all the keys are in the sacred geometric patterns that come from antiquity, right? All the designs and stuff like that. That's the nano world that needs to be replicated in design to capture these vibrations, to enhance the world into a different state, which once existed. And the reason it no longer exists is because it was such a fine array of development that when the firmament came crashing down, it destroyed most of it. That's where you've got stories of, found on the Ural Mountains, that little tiny spiral of nanoparticle stuff.
Ural Mountains are super important. It was a school.
Yeah, sound technology. Remember seeing a documentary, I think it was linking to the Anunnaki timeline / story of Michael Tellinger from South Africa. And it's called Adam's Calendar, where they've discovered a sundial and circle where the rocks have been, he got a geologist out and said, no, these rocks are 500,000 years old. And it's all set up perfectly to the sun and everything else like that. Then you look over, because it's on the top of a ridge, you look out in the valley and you see 3 pyramids where there was a mass flood or asteroid hitting up near Egypt, and it just washed all this stuff. And so it's not a perfect pyramid. There's one side where all the silt is banked up. And it's around that area, there were the mainstream sites like, oh no, they're huts because they were made, and it was basically for the mining, and they're using sound technology because Michael actually grabs two of these flat stones, hits them together, and they've been recorded at they resonate at 3.5 gig.
Have you seen all those funny stones that resonate completely differently to any other rock you've ever heard? Maybe sometimes these stones were used in these ceremonies or levitation ceremonies, or you've seen obviously the array of Tibetan musicians that were told to be able to focus their musical tones on this one kind of lift stone, and to be able to make these temples up in the hills, up in the cliffs.
You can see the basics. You can see the basic science of it in an amphitheater from ancient Greece, or what we refer to as ancient Greece, the Romans and everything else like that, because they didn't have PAs and electricity and amplification. They actually had the the crowd has to be quiet. Good old days. But it's surrounded where someone's sitting in the you got the amphitheater, but the next step up would be the globe, which during Shakespeare's time, at the globe, apparently, if you stand in the center stage right at the front, everyone can hear you perfectly because of the way that the sound bounces around. It's mathematically designed so you could almost whisper at the front of center stage, and everyone in the structure can hear you. Yeah, it's even in a Doctor Who episode. I mean, obviously it's Doctor Who, but it's still, the premise is there where it's a certain
based on theory.
You've seen there's experiments that the uni students doing, getting the bass thing and blowing out fire with sound, and stuff like that. But or killing fire with sound. But the thing is that those stones that Tellinger's talking about, they're all like teardropped, right? They're all like fallen tears, the shape of them. The reason that is because they come from the firmament too. There's a lot of things that came down, including the sands of the deserts, including sod and all sorts of things as well, because there was an existence that existed up there. People don't get it, but they will eventually. So the technology is so finely tuned. It's all about attuning to the sound. In somatics, you've seen the somatic demonstrations with sound and, putting sand on a plate and playing music.
Yep.
Well, that is how you can figure out. You can do the same thing. If you get a rock, any particular rock, crystalline rock or rock, and you throw some salt on there and you play certain notes to it, you're going to notice that in the range of notes, at certain notes, the salt particles are going to line up because it makes the rock shake a little bit.
So, Harry, what's your thoughts on 440 versus 432?
Look, the harmonic, the 440, of course, is a wavelength cycle that they figured out for the consciousness of man to be drilled, right? To be drummed.
I thought it was just used because synths were around at the time. It was an easy way to try and set things.
During World War II, the Nazis changed it to 440.
Did they though?
That seems to be in the timeline. But beforehand, before then, orchestras were in 432, and there was a better connection to the human. And then 440 is in dissonance, and so it grates when you listen to it. I've listened to Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here in 442. It does sound slightly different, but it feels warmer and it connects with you because it's just the vibration coming through. Yeah, and also I'd like to. We're coming up to the end. I just want to add this little tidbit. A French scientist discovered that 5 hertz, which is 5 cycles a second, so it's a very low bass frequency. It liquefies the human body. I think earthquakes are about 7 hertz. The earthquakes are about 7 hertz or 8 hertz, strangely enough, near the Schumann resonance. But the funny thing is, he went through a lot of assistance finding that out, because he would get his assistant to go out in the field and turn the machine on, and he would die. And that's how they found out. 5 hertz liquefies the body because the human body can't resonate at that. So
that's how they got the name hertz, because he goes How you going?
Ooh,
It hurts.
Ow!
Yeah. Sacre bleu, I'm melting. We are coming up to the end of Planet Collingwood. Go ahead, Bruce, and then I'll start wrapping up.
Yeah, I just wanted to get the opinions of the roundtable before we wrap up. Simple question. Based on everything we know, and especially what we discussed tonight, and what I perceive to be as a general awakening happening in humanity, what's everybody's prognosis on the future? Do you think what we're going through is ultimately a positive thing, and we're going to unshackle ourselves from literally millennia of servitude to unseen masters? Or do you think this is the end and you're very cynical about it and everything's going to blow up and we're all going to die?
Can we unpack this at the after party?
If you hang around for it, yeah. But freedom or death? Cortek, which one did you choose?
Freedom! Freedom!
Right. Now, is that what? Yeah. To answer Bruce's question, you can see we'll be free down the track.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Harry, freedom or death? And it's not me. I'm not giving you this choice. It's what you see in the future.
Well, I'm the eternal hopping pist, so.
Freedom or death? Two choices. We're running out of time.
Oh, death!
Oh,
someone had to choose it eventually. It's just
yeah. Bruce, where do you stand? Freedom or death?
Yeah, freedom. I think we're going into a much better place.
Yeah. Mechanic, freedom or death?
Yeah, we and all others who believe in freedom as deeply as we do would rather die on our feet than live on our knees.
Right on.
That's probably the best answer. It's like, yeah, if I don't get freedom, I'll probably die. But at least I'm fighting for freedom. Sergeant Miller, freedom or death? What do you see in the timeline?
It's always about freedom. And I just tell you, for every dark age, there is a renaissance.
That's right.
Yeah, there's an upswing. Yeah, we're on a downswing or an upswing. I think I covered everybody, yes.
There is no movement without friction. That's the way it goes.
Duality sucks. I'm leaning towards freedom. It may be a bit wobbly, and we'll get there in the end. But that's one of the stupidest things I've probably said. You know, it's the last place you looked. Well, duh. You know, I found it. I'm going to keep looking.
Where's my remote for the future?
Yeah, so I'm leaning toward it. May be a bit rocky and wobbly and be interesting times. However, at the end of the day, freedom. And then, there'll be no such thing as death. But that's further down the timeline. This is Planet Collingwood. Mechanic, would you like to let people know where they can find you on Revolution Radio?
My next show here, we are, tomorrow. Yeah, my next show will be tomorrow. I host the High Council on Revolution Radio, Freedoms of Song, at 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, midnight on the East Coast.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Bruce, you can be found. I know you've got like 7 books. Because you sent me that article about that unfortunate woman that was killed and that podcast. And
that's coming back in vogue now because he just got out of prison.
Oh, okay. And so, just go onto Amazon, put in Bruce MacDonald, and you'll find a bevy of literary works. And
fiction,
of course,
non-fiction, true crime, anything you want.
Yep. Harry, Cortek, and Sergeant Miller, big thank you to John Z. They'll be appearing at their local houses and sometimes public transport, as well as on roundtables. This is Planet Collingwood. We'll be back in 6 days and 22 hours. You've been awesome. I'm me, and I love you from afar. So, if you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and all that stuff. And if you want to stick around, I think Cortek and crew may keep going with the after party. So, we shall see. Have fun, everyone. There we go.
Thank you, Monty.